Tragedy is no stranger to the world of DC Comics. From the death of a loved one to losing their powers, many superheroes have suffered through dark times. But even in the darkest hours, they always find a way to pull through and become stronger than ever before. Sometimes that's not an option. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me. And today, we're going to look at the life of DC's worst superhero. These are characters whose tragic stories resulted in their untimely demise. But don't worry, because some of them end up in heaven, while others return from the dead. Let's get started. Jason Todd. When Batman realized that he needed a sidekick, he decided to take in a young boy named Jason Todd, who had been brought up by criminals after his mother was killed. This made him the second Robin after Dick Grayson. However, when Killer Croc attacked the new Robin, Batman showed up just in time to see the villain deliver a fatal blow. Although he managed to defeat Croc, Batman was too late to save Jason. After this traumatic event, Batman blamed himself for what happened and went into a deep depression, until he was brought out of it by the arrival of another sidekick. We learned that the Joker played a role in Jason's death, which motivated Batman to train the young man and turn him into the ruthless anti-hero known as Red Hood. Later, during the Under the Hood storyline, Red Hood would take his revenge against the Joker and come close to killing him. He then began leading a secret team of young vigilantes known as the Outlaws. Bruce Wayne, also known as Batman, had quite a rough childhood. His parents were killed when he was still very young, and that was a terrible thing to witness. But it wasn't the only tragedy he had to deal with. In fact, there was another incident that was just as heartbreaking. A young Bruce Wayne was diagnosed with a rare blood disease. Even though everything possible was done to save him, he didn't make it, and his butler, Alfred Pennyworth, had to come to terms with the loss of his dear friend. This moment of grief became one of the most iconic scenes in Batman history. It was Alfred who found Bruce after he collapsed, and he tried his best to help him, but there was nothing he could do. Bruce was gone. Of course, this story has been adapted for other media like the movies and TV shows. But if you want to experience all the feels, you can read the Batman, the Widening Gyre graphic novel. Carrie Kelly! Carrie Kelly was a normal teenager until she was bitten by a radioactive cat, turning her into one of the most powerful heroines in Gotham City. She gained abilities such as enhanced strength, speed, and agility, as well as razor-sharp claws. At first, she didn't know how to control these powers, but soon, she learned and became Catwoman. Although she often clashed with Batman, they ended up becoming allies, especially when the Dark Knight detective needed someone to distract the villains. During the No Man's Land storyline, Catwoman took it upon herself to protect Gotham City after Batman was While facing off against villains, she saved as many people as she could, showing everyone that she was more than capable of being a hero. Unfortunately, this came at a price because during the battle, she was shot and ultimately died in Batman's arms. Fortunately, she was eventually resurrected and got to live a happy life with Batman. Wally West. Wally West was one of the greatest speedsters in the DC universe. He succeeded the Flash, Barry Allen, and used his powers to protect Central City. But he didn't just fight villains. Wally also helped out his friends whenever he could. This was especially true when he teamed up with Kid Flash, Jesse Quick, and Max Mercury to try and bring back Barry Allen from the Speed Force. This mission was successful, and Barry returned to the land of the living, but it came at a cost. Because shortly after, Wally was involved in an accident that caused him to lose his wife and daughter. Grief-stricken, he retired from being the Flash, but was eventually talked back into action by Barry. Now that he was back in action, he vowed to use his powers to protect the innocent and make sure that no one else had to go through the pain that he did. That's why he's known as one of the most heroic speedsters in the DC universe! Stonehole. Stonehole was a police officer who specialized in fighting crime using his intellect rather than brute force. This made him the perfect candidate to be partnered with Batman, as both of them shared a similar philosophy. They worked together to dismantle criminal organization, which put them on the radar of crime boss Carmine Falcone, who ordered a hit on Gordon. Although he survived the attempt on his life, things went downhill from there as he was framed for the murder of a fellow officer, which forced him to go into hiding. Commissioner Gordon was eventually cleared of all charges, but this was only the beginning of his problems. He continued to be targeted by Falcone, and even when he enlisted Batman's help, he was still nearly killed. Despite all this, Gordon never gave up. He remained determined to clean up Gotham City and bring down its criminals, no matter the cost. Connor Hawk. Connor Hawk was the son of DC hero Green Arrow. He grew up wanting to follow in his father's footsteps, and so Oliver began training him to become the next Speedy. However, this was before Oliver Queen was killed by an unknown assassin. Although Connor and his mother were able to attend his funeral, they didn't get much time to grieve because not long after, the underboss of the League of Assassins arrived and kidnapped Connor. This was done as revenge for Oliver's death, and they intended to raise Connor as a weapon of mass destruction. Despite all the evil that was done to him, Connor never lost sight of who he wanted to be. After escaping from his captors, he set out to become a new Green Arrow and honor his father's legacy. Barry Allen. Barry Allen was already a successful forensic scientist. When he was struck by lightning and doused in chemicals, which gave him the ability to vibrate at superhuman speeds. At first, he used his powers to commit crimes, but he quickly realized that he didn't want to lead a life of a fugitive. So he turned himself into the authorities and was sentenced to prison. Fortunately, the other inmates respected him, so they allowed him to perform science experiments in the prison's chemistry lab. After escaping from prison, Barry Allen decided to use his powers for good instead of evil. He took on the identity of the Flash and became one of the most powerful superheroes in the DC universe. But as we mentioned earlier, his powers came at a cost. During the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, Barry sacrificed himself to save the universe from the end. Even though he died, his legacy lived on through his protege, Wally West, who took over the Flash mantle after this. Helen Keller. Helen Keller was a normal human being until she was mortally wounded by a villain named Hugo Strange. As she lay dying, she was visited by 3 spirits who told her that she had 2 choices. She could either go to heaven or remain on Earth and become a super. Although becoming a hero meant that she would have to give up on going to heaven, she chose the latter. And as a result, she was given superpowers. She joined forces with Batman and the rest of the Justice League, but unfortunately, her time as a superhero was cut short because she ended up dying again. However, this time, she was brought back to life and given the opportunity to choose her own path. In the current continuity, Helen Keller chose to become a journalist instead of a superhero, but she still uses her powers to help others whenever she can. This made him the first Robin, but he didn't stay in that role forever. Eventually, he got tired of being Batman's sidekick, and so he left to become He continued to fight crime in Bloodhaven, but he always kept in touch with Batman and the rest of the Justice League. One day, the team was ambushed by Starfire, and Nightwing got serious. He was sent to the hospital, where doctors tried their best to save his life, but there was nothing they could do. Dick Grayson had become the first member of the Teen Titans to die. This was a traumatic experience for the team, but it did unlast long, because Dick was brought back to life and resumed his role as Night. Which character was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're at it, be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon to keep up with all our new content. Until next time, see you!
Follow Unlimited League Zone. Like, share, and subscribe for more superhero battles.